is Matthew 6, 9, 13, which we've been hearing often lately. So let's read it. Pray then like this: Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, we are in the Lord's Prayer again. I think we can stay here quite a while. Didn't know if I was going to come back to it again next sermon, but in the past week I felt that to come back to it and talk about this house as a hallowed life or a hollow. And as we're looking at the Lord's Prayer, we're looking about how Jesus' life and his prayer, his words, and his works were informed with his understanding of the Father, himself, in relation to the Father, the kingdom, and God's redemptive story, looking to redeem mankind and creation. And so we've been looking at that and talking about how he had this integrated life. It's not like we say this prayer, okay, we say the prayer here. We say it here, but then also we go out and we live our life. It's disconnected. Sometimes we live a disconnected life. Sometimes we have our secular life and our spiritual life. It's supposed to be one. Jesus lived one life, and all of it was sacred. It's supposed to be for us too. And so what I want to look at is today is looking at this as about talking about worship. We're going to focus on worship. But this integrated life, it's like we talk about reading this year, or worshiping. We identify with we're coming to church on a Sunday and we're going to worship together. And that is one part of it. But I want to take it out of this sanctuary into a bigger sanctuary. And Jesus, when he lived his life, most of the time when you read the scriptures, when you read the Bible, there's not a lot of it that you see him in a sanctuary or in a synagogue or a temple. It's out and about in life, everyday place, and in the marketplace, and in the families and homes. And so you see that his life that was lived for God, and his prayer and his words and his works in everyday life, and it was a part of that. So he lived a sacred. So our life, what we do with our life speaks, right? Even if we don't say anything, do we speak something? So look at it that way. His life and his words, they were a conversation. So he's living this sacred conversation every day of his life in this bigger sanctuary called the world. So when we think of that, we're going to talk about worship and prayer and his life in that context. Not just coming to church on Sunday. I'm not saying we don't come to church. We're just saying we're going to see it. Because how many hours do we spend here? A couple hours, right? You know how many hours we're in a week? 168 hours. That's 166 hours out there that we're called to live a sacred conversation before the world that's watching us. That's what I want to talk about. That's the context that we want to talk about or speak from today. And we're going to look at this thing called worship. And worship, as we see, it started here in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father in heaven, our Father. You see, Jesus had this dynamic, this genuine, this interactive, ongoing conversation, relationship with his Father. That's what his life was formed on, shaped by that relationship he had ongoing with his Father. And so it's meant for us to have the same thing. And we're called to have this relationship, this connection to our Father. He's caring, he's personal, right? And we can see him, he's Father. Like when I wasn't a Christian, even as a young Christian, I could deal with Jesus. He could be my friend. But the Father for me for the longest time was somebody who was distant. He was hard. And he was the disciplinarian, I guess. And it was hard for me to connect. It's changed now. But Jesus had this Father that was personal and caring. And he's also, as he says, and that is our Father in heaven. He's transcendent. He's wholly other than us. You recognize, right, that he's not like us, right? That's a good thing. Because if he was like us, well, I don't know if any of us was us. But he's not like us. So he's wholly different than us. He's transcendent. He's different. So he's this personal God, caring God, but he's also different than us. He's the creator. We're the created. So it is worship, this response here, our Father in heaven. Starts us off with this understanding is that God is personal, Father, but he's also different than us. He's created. We're created. We are wholly dependent. He is completely self-sufficient. He doesn't need anything, and we need everything. I mean, everything we have, all that we are, the breath we have, the moment we have right now is just a gift. A gift from Him for us to enjoy right now. So we approach, we sing, Father in heaven. So we have this kind of tension of familiarity. I can't see it where we're at. I can't even talk about it. This closeness, this intimacy with God, but at the same time with the tension of being fearful and in awe of Him. And that's what we're supposed to live like. So here, that's where Jesus starts. He calls us, when we call to pray, we're called to live our life. Well, think of life, think of prayer as a life. Our life, whether it's our words or our works, it's in that context of that relationship. Understanding Him that way. And He goes on, says, hallowed be thy name. Wait, before I go to that, was anybody up at 4 o'clock yesterday morning outside looking at the stars for the meteor shower? You did? Yeah, I did. You did too? Did you guys see anything? No. Okay. So I went out there like at 4:30 in the morning to go out there, and I was out there for a while, and I was looking, and I didn't see one. And I was just seeing, and I would actually, it was okay, because I was staring at the stars. And I was just amazed at how bright the stars were. And just thinking about God's greatness. And in that moment, I went looking for stars, and said, God gave me scripture. Psalm 19, 1 through 2, which I fit into the sermon here. I'll try to explain what this means is, hallowed be your name part. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies above proclaim His handiwork. Day to day pour out speech, and night to night reveal knowledge. The heavens declare the glory of God. They pour out their speech. They reveal knowledge. And what He's saying is they have this language of their own that we can look and be in awe of our God, right? And so when He talks about hallowed be your name, He's not saying, okay, you guys, ask God to make Himself more holy. Right? Because God's holy already. He's not asking us to ask God to become more holy. He's saying, let you be holy or seen as holy or sacred in my life. In what I do. Just as the skies and the heavens pour out speech and reveal knowledge, so our life is called, actually our life, not as we're supposed to be doing, our life right now, all the time, is pouring out speech and revealing some kind of knowledge. It's just a matter of whether it's sacred or not. Whether it's hallowed or profane. And so here He's saying, Jesus calling it, it's the Lord's Prayer. If you can go back there, Leslie, hallowed be your name, is understanding, it's not about asking God to become holy, it's asking God, it's a reminder ourselves to see our life, that we're called to live a life and ask for God's grace in our life, that we can live a life that as we live it and other people see it, they see all that God is through us. Just as Jesus walked around and said, you've seen me, you've seen who? The Father. We have the potential to walk by people and reveal Jesus to them. We pour out speech and reveal knowledge all the time. It's just a matter of what that speech looks like or what that speech speaks of. And so here He's calling us, is hallowed be your name. Another way of saying it, Jesus in Matthew 5:16, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. We're going to go to John 4:19. Good, Leslie. Thank you. And before we go there, just understanding that this part of Scripture where Jesus is in Samaria. He's going to meet a woman. He's going to talk to a woman here. But just some background is understanding some of the context of this, what's happening here, the story that's happening. Jesus, the Samaritans and the Jews did not get along. They didn't like each other. The Jews looked down on them. The Jews actually didn't like them. In fact, they would actually avoid traveling through Samaria. In fact, if they were going somewhere and Samaria is in between, he would go around it to go a long way so they wouldn't have to go through Samaria. And so they even actually did not like them being a part of their temple, being in their temple or being involved in their worship. They didn't want them near that at all, near them or near their worship at all. That's kind of the context. And so Jesus, in the beginning of John chapter 4, verse 4, He said, I got to go to Samaria. I must go. Who do you think told him? The Father. The last couple of times talking about it, he said he was living a life at distance, trying to distinguish God's will. And he's understanding God's moving him to go to Samaria, so he's going to Samaria. Here's one of the reachings of Jesus to people. You see it throughout the Scripture. reaching across culture, different ways people look at me. We think of how we measure people today and how we judge people with prejudice. This is not nothing new. It was happening here, right? You see it right here. And so Jesus comes there, he starts to talk to the woman at the well, talks to her about drinks, and he starts to talk to her about her life. In fact, at this point, he asks about the husband she has. She goes, I don't have a husband. He goes, yeah, you're right. You don't have a husband. In fact, you have 5 of them already, and the one you have now, the one you're living with, or the one you're with, is not your husband. And now we're going to join the story, verse 19. Jesus has something from the Spirit of God about this woman who's got this men on her life. There's no way he could have known except God shows him. And he says this to her. And here's her response in verse 19. We're going to keep it here, let's look to it for a little bit. The woman said to him, Sir, I perceive you are a prophet. All of a sudden, she's having a conversation, and he goes, oh, by the way, this is about your life. He's like, uh-oh. He knows something about me. How is this happening? This is God. You must be a prophet. You're Jewish. You're a prophet. She's starting to make the connection. Okay, what's going on here? And she starts, we're going to see where she goes. She starts to actually start to think about God and how to worship God. There's conviction here in this moment. She points a finger at part of her life that's broken and needs healing and needs restoration. And at this point, it brings conviction to her the way she's responding. Now, is conviction a good thing? Conviction is a great thing. That's the work of the Holy Spirit. If you're being convicted, don't think God's mad at you. God is bringing conviction so you could find healing. So you can be drawn to Him, repent, and find healing of that part of your life. So He's bringing healing to her, bringing conviction. So he points the finger here, and she responds. And then he goes on to the next verse, 20. So he says, first says, oh, you must be a prophet. You must be a prophet. Okay. Oh, our fathers been worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship. Keep your lesson. You catch that? This jumped out the page for me this past week. I never saw it. I've read so many times. Remember, you ever read the Bible and also you read and also words like, who put that there? This is one of those moments. The word ought. You say, meaning you, the Jews, say that in Jerusalem is a place where you ought to worship. You say you got worship right. You say you have the right place to worship. You say you have the right sacrifice. You say you have the right methods and practices to worship. In us Samaritans, we don't. This is what she's saying here. You're saying it's supposed to be over here. So you're saying we don't, because you know what? You don't like us next to you. You don't think we should be a part of your worship. You don't think we should be involved in the temple. But by the way, maybe she might be asking, if you don't like me, does God like me? If you don't want me here, does God want me here? She knows he's a prophet. You know he's saying that. So she's asking for answers. She's hoping that he's going to give her the answers that she can find God finally. See, our fathers told us over here, and you say he's over here, but where is it? Where is the place that I can find God? That's what she's asking. So Jesus points a finger at something and draws her to a conversation about God, to encounter God. You thought sometimes I was reading a thing like, and sometimes we think like, sometimes we measure people, we evaluate people, we judge people's worship styles, maybe the songs they sing, the place that they do, the kneeling, the standing, the ringing the bell, the lighting the candles. We measure people all the time. Am I the only one? Okay. So we have this, we're just prone to it. It's not something new. It's there in us. It's there with Jesus' day. It was happening and it was hurting her. How can I get to God? We have to be careful if we're living a hallowed life or a hollow life. Are we drawing people to God or are we turning people from God? Are we causing people to live a hollow life because we have a hollow life? We only can give what we have. And if we don't have a hallowed life, we can't give one away. So this critical spirit is here. It's nothing, it's not new. It hurts people. And I was drawn, I went and found that Romans 14, verse 1 through 5 is the message version. And sometimes, I was talking to Christy earlier, sometimes we read the Bible over and over, and all of a sudden we turn and also we read the message, and we get so familiar with a passage, and all of a sudden the message goes, it goes, boom, it pulls it up out of the page, and you're like, whoa, okay. And I'm hoping that does it for you. It did it for me. With regards to this judging people. And it reads, welcome with open arms, fellow believers who don't see things the way you do. And don't jump all over them every time they do or say something you don't agree with. Even when it seems they are of strong opinions but weak in faith. For instance, a person who has been around for a while might well be convinced that he can eat anything on the table, while another with a different background might assume all Christians should be vegetarians and eat accordingly. But since both are guests at Christ's table, wouldn't it be terribly rude if they fell to criticizing what the other ate and didn't eat? God, after all, invited them both to the table. Do you have any business crossing people off the guest list or interfering with God's law? If there are corrections to be made or manners to be learned, God can handle that without your help. Or say to one person, one person thinks that some days should be set aside as holy, and another thinks each day is pretty much like any other. There are good reasons either way, so each person is free to follow the convictions of his conscience. I think it's Paul's response to our measuring, evaluating, and judging. We're back to the worship that Jesus talks about the temple, and we're going to go back actually to John chapter 4, verse 21 through 23. We're going to pick it back up where she's asked Jesus about which way is the right way, and she's in search of the right way, and she's hoping that Jesus has the answer. She's concerned about God. She's wanting to know, I got to find God. You're the one who's actually put this pointed out to me. I need to fix it. I need to make it right. I'm looking for an answer. She's asking it. Then Jesus responds to her. Jesus said, woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You will worship. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here, when the true worshiper will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such people to worship him. We keep right there, guys. But the hour is coming and now is. Jesus responds to her, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain or on that mountain will people worship God. It's not about that place, and it's not about that style, it's not about that church building, it's not about that song, it's not about that liturgy. That's not the worship thing. Jesus makes his point. He's breaking, Jesus in his day when he came, he was breaking things outside the temple walls all the time. And they were always getting upset with him. And see, they were locking it into this system that they had management over and control of the people over. And Jesus was trying to break it out of that to the bigger sanctuary of the whole world that God is over. Doesn't mean we don't come on Sunday. I'm not saying that. But he was breaking it out of that mold for them. I mean, he came and when he said to the guy, your sins are forgiven you, they got upset. Not just because it was forgiven. He said, they're like, wait, we're supposed to be doing that in the temple. You're supposed to do a sacrifice. It's got to go to a priest. And Jesus said, no, the Father forgives. He was breaking it outside the mold. Here's the same thing. It's not about being on, it's the hour is coming and it now is. Why is it now here? Jesus is now here. That way, Adam sees it. There is something new. In me, you can worship the Father anywhere. It's not tied just to a place or a method, though we follow them. Hey, I like certain ways of worship. How about you? Certain songs we all like, certain ways we're drawn to certain place. I like my porch and my wood stove. Okay? Or your truck. So we have. It doesn't mean that those are more sacred than any other place. It's just that we as people, we have certain personalities that God uses, and God places us, and it makes us more open to God, I guess. It says that they're more favorite places for us. That's okay. But worship is not just because it's sacred, because God is there and we're there with Him. That's what makes it sacred in that moment. And because we are always with God, every moment of our life is a sacred conversation lived in this bigger sanctuary, just like Jesus. Well, we got off the nose. Yep. So he's saying the Father's not seeking a building. He doesn't say, for the Father is seeking a temple or practice. No, what's your Father seeking? He's after people. People. Not a place, not a practice, not a method, but a people. He's after people. He's looking for people. He's seeking after people. He's seeking after worshipers. And he says, and he's saying there, the reason he's saying, now put this in context, there's a time coming. No, it's right here. It's right here, right now, Rich. No. Well, Rich is not married a woman. I'm sorry, Rich. But just imagine that for a moment. And he says, there's a time coming, Rich. Oh no, it's right here, right now. You know why it's here right now? Because the Father personally has sent me to you right now to extend an invitation to return to me. He's seeking people, and he was sending Jesus to live a hallowed life to extend this invitation. Return to me. Don't go seeking those places and practices and ways and works and efforts to get you to me. I'm here. I'm after you. He was extending that invitation to her. You may be here. You may be have a sense of being wandering, lost, wondering if I'm doing things the right way. How do I get to God? I want you to hear that same invitation that Jesus was extending to that woman. Return to me. That's the Father's call to you. Return to me. Return to me. Hear him calling to you, for the Father's seeking you right now. Now, it's not just finding you to come in a relationship with it, because Jesus talked about worshipers that worship in spirit and truth. So he's wanting us to find him, but not just so we find relationship with him, that we can then become the ones that live hallowed lives also. That we can then express the invitation to others that are still looking for it and longing for it. And so he's looking for worship in spirit and truth. So what does he mean by spirit and truth? You know, and I'm just going to keep it simple here. Because we can get caught up in like, in spirit is this, and in truth is this, and we become so locked up about the way we do it. But for me, simply, it was worshipers who are alive with a new birth. They're alive with the Spirit of God. They're full of and enabled and empowered by the Spirit of God and the love of the Father that looks to continue to extend this invitation to people all around us. In truth, it's those that live in truth, walk in truth, worship by truth, who God is and who we are to Him. They live genuine, real lives between God and the world around them. Worshippers who will hallow His name, as we just said, praying. Who are willing to live a life that is sacred, a sacred conversation in this bigger sanctuary, and willing to extend that same invitation. Return to the Father. Return to the Father. That's a hallowed life. A hallowed life. Romans 12, 1 through 2 is what we're getting waiting. I really want you guys to hear the Father's heart, because in this, Jesus was here to extend the heart of the Father that we could have a relationship with Him in a way that would change us forever. Not just for when we get to heaven, but right here and right now. It's not a time that's coming up in the future. It's a time right now for us. That we can worship in spirit and truth and have a relationship, a dynamic encounter with the living God. And that's what He's looking for. He's seeking for us to have that. In Romans 12, 1 through 2 says, the book's leading up to this point, and Paul is talking to the church saying, you guys, you know what? God's mercy is so great. He's just got done explaining the amazing grace, the election of God, of His people, the working of drawing them so they would know Him and encounter Him. He says, in light of that, by the mercies of God, now present, here's my life, Lord. He sang a song. Eric didn't have any idea, and I had no idea what she was singing. Here God lined something up. God reminded us. offer our life as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing we may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. I appeal to you. I call out to you. Present your lives a living sacrifice. Present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy, or another word would be hallowed. Just like hallowed be your name. Holy, hallowed, and acceptable to God. It's your spiritual worship. Here is the priesthood of all believers. Before it was a dead sacrifice. You bring a sacrifice, and they couldn't get close to God. They had to give it to another priest. You're a priest now. Every one of you is a priest unto God. This is important. I made the point. Here's the priesthood of all believers. Before, only a select few could go before God and bring this offering. In this moment, here's a living offering. It's no more bringing that offering and you have to hand it over and someone else takes it and you have this no intimate relational connection to the God that you're sacrificing to. And they bring in this sacrifice that's dead, that's unresponsive. And he said, no, you have this is all of you. And notice it doesn't say bring your body. It doesn't say present your body. It says actually bodies. See, this is a call to the church. It's called the believers in Rome. And the believers in South Hadley, not just Second Baptist, the believers in Massachusetts. Present your bodies as a living sacrifice. Responsive, interactive, all that it is. Offer your life, all your emotions, your abilities, all of it. Your personality, your passions, your strengths, your weaknesses. Offer it to God as one lifelong offering, living, responding to Him. You know why? Because you know what the church is ever going, right? It's supposed to be ever maturing, growing, maturing in Christ. So it's always changing. So guess what our response is? It's a different situation than it was last week. Tomorrow you're going to encounter something different. It's always an interactive, living relationship with God, a living sacrifice to God that we present to Him. As you read on, most of the time we just read chapter 12, and chapter 12, verse 1 and 2, and we kind of skip the rest. Actually, if we read through the rest, we're not going to get through all of it. The next couple of chapters, actually, Paul starts to describe what a living sacrifice looks like. He says, present the living sacrifice, and by the way, here's how you do it. This is what you're supposed to do. And it all involves relationships. Relationships, community. How to live that life as a living sacrifice, as a worship to God. And so I just want to hit a couple. Verse 3. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God had assigned. There's another one I just want to read, a little clip from the Message version. Eugene Peterson writes it this way. He says, don't be vain and arrogant, and don't inflate yourself. Do not misinterpret yourself as people who are bringing this goodness to God. No, bring it all, God brings it all to you. The only accurate way to understand ourselves is by what God is and by what He does for us, not by what we are and what we do for Him. See, part of this living sacrifice, very foundation is humility and meekness, understanding who we really are. Hear that worship back in the very beginning. Understanding He's created, we're not. He's the creator, we're created, we're not like Him. We are dependent on Him. And it says, verse 4 through 8 reads, for as in one body we have many members, and the members do not have the same function. So we, though many, are one body in Christ, individual members one of another, having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us. Let us use them in prophecy and for worship of our faith, in service and our serving, the one who teaches in his teaching, the one who exhorts in his exhortation, the one who contributes in his generosity, the one who leads with zeal, and the one who does acts of mercy with cheerfulness. Each of us has this responsibility to present our body, to present our life, all that we are, our whole being, to God, and to start to function with our giftings within the community of faith that we're part of. Sometimes it's in a big setting like this on a Sunday, but for the most part it's 166 hours out there that we're interrelated with each other, living out this faith. And we're called to function in a way that actually helps the whole body function together to extend that invitation. Return to the Father. Return to the Father. One last one. Verse 9. Let love be genuine. Let it be real. Let it be sincere. Let it be without hypocrisy. And let it be demonstrated. Not just talk about it. Abhor who is evil. You guys get that? What? I said that on purpose. Notice it doesn't say abhor who is evil. What is evil? Hate, detest. What is evil? And if you understand that he's writing this in the context of relationship and community and healthy, functional community and relationships, you understand now he's saying, abhor what is evil. Hate or detest anything. Anything that is hurtful, grievous, or undermines or is destructive to healthy, functional relationship and community. Don't let yourself have any part of it. Don't enable it either. There's things like manipulation, control, envy, pride, innuendos, sowing discord, causing distrust with people. And actually, there's another one. We can enable it by not saying it. Abhor those things that can destroy healthy community. That's a living sacrifice. That's our spiritual worship. Then he goes on and says, hold fast or cleave to what is good. Next verse, sorry. That's the first line. Last part. Cleave. Hold fast or cleave to what is good. Hold to what is good. Hold to what is honorable. Hold to what is beneficial. Hold to what's going to be useful. Do the things that will help continue to build and mature healthy relationship and community. Maybe you could go on. There's so much there. And I want to encourage you, read it. Remember, this is not just about words we read on a page. This is supposed to be our life. This is supposed to be our sacred conversation before God and before people in this world. And Paul, verse, actually, we got to verse 12. Can you go there, Leslie? I'm going to close with this. It says, be constant in prayer. It's this thing of this, it goes on for a while. Here, Paul comes back to be constant in prayer. Where do we start? The Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer calls us to worship, a lifestyle of worship. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Here, as he comes through and starts to talk about living sacrifice that's hallowed and acceptable God as our living worship, he's saying be constant in prayer. The foundation for Jesus was he went away, right? He went away and connected with his Father. He was interactive. It was a dynamic, living relationship we had. So here, we were talking about this. We can read all what we're reading and say, I'm going to try to make myself do that. Guess what? It ain't going to work. You don't have the strength or the power to make this life real in you. The only way it's going to become real in you is if you are dependent on and have the power of the Holy Spirit in your life. And here he comes back, say, come back to be constant in prayer. Jesus went back to the Father all the time. It's the place where we behold Him. It's the place where we delight in Him. It's the place we ponder Him. It's the place we relate with Him. Not just individually, but corporately this big, in smaller groups. I mean, go over to Rich's house, we're talking, we can pray together. We're sharing together. That's what it means. In those moments, when we behold Him, we actually, somehow we get changed. I just know it works. I just know if we get ourselves in that place and create that environment, we can have this relational connection with God, with Him personally, and with each other, with Him. I look back and look at my life 30 years now, I'm like, whoa! Just back a year ago in your life. If you put yourself in that place, you will be more and more like the person Jesus wants you to be. It happens. You become transformed. That's that worship in spirit and truth. And if we do that, if we put ourselves in a place where God can transform us, then we'll progressively be transformed. We'll begin to think God's thoughts. We'll start to think the way He sees things. We'll start to see things the way He sees things. We'll start to desire the things He desires. We'll start to love the things and the people He loves. And we'll start to will what He wills, and we'll begin to live a life that will echo that same call, return to me. Now the question is, will we live a hallowed life or a hollow? That's my question to you and to me. all of us. Let's pray. Father, thank you. I'm going to go right back to the beginning prayer. God, my Father, Father in heaven, the Holy One, Sovereign, I thank you for the relationship that we can have with you, that I can have with you, that we can have together with you. God, we thank you for that, God, for the grace that you've shown us and the mercy you've given us. And God, we return to the prayer, we pray it. Hallowed be your name. God, let our life, our words, our works, the conversation of who we are as a people, let it proclaim your holiness, your goodness, your kindness, your mercy, your grace. And let it speak to who you really are. I pray, God, help us to be people that are genuine, that abhor evil, and that cling to good. We love you, Lord. In your name we pray.